Good evening, everybody. On this night of Good Friday, I welcome you to this service at Mineral Wells. I'm delighted to be with you tonight on a night unlike any other night in our church year, any other night during the year, and we call it Good Friday. We call it good as a matter of looking back, as Dr. Craddock used to remind us in seminary. We don't interpret it as good. Except in the fact that we were able to look back and say that this was something that was good for all of the human race, including me and you. But at the time, this had to do with the death of who was known at the time as Jesus of Nazareth, a death by crucifixion, a death by the penalty reserved in the Roman Empire for only the worst of the worst. The Roman citizen could not be crucified. So it was saved for those who were not citizens and who had been convicted of a heinous crime. Share just a few moments out of Mark 15 tonight. There it says, and I'll quote this by memory. I miss a few parts of it, but this is the gist of it, that Jesus was hung on the cross at at noontime and died at 3 o'clock. That is, it took him 3 hours upon that cross to expire. While there were those that thought he might call on Elijah to come and save him, at the account, the belief that Elijah could do that, the prophet that had gone before him. Somebody rushed up to him with vinegar, which they did so as some kind of balm or tonic or painkiller. He refused to take it. Around the cross, it says there were gathered not the disciples, but the women that had followed him. Mary, his mother, Mary Magdalene, some other women that had been with him from the beginning almost in the Galilean ministry, and then those that followed him on his way to Jerusalem. The disciples, according to Mark, were conspicuously not at the cross. It would have put their lives in jeopardy. The women that followed him, perhaps didn't care about what was at jeopardy, other than the fact that Jesus was being crucified. The account also goes on to say that the darkness covered the land upon his death, that the curtain of the temple, the most sacred spot in the Jewish faith, was rent from top to bottom, and a Roman centurion, and a total outsider to the faith, remarked when it says he saw how he died, and he remarked, "Surely this is the Son of God." This is the first confession of faith by an outsider in Mark's gospel. I'll share with you tonight just a brief message on what Jesus gave up. Death is something we experience vicariously until we have to experience it, then we can't tell anybody about it, not on this side of things. It's something we know by inference, from watching other people, perhaps by losing people that are close to us. It's not something we like to think about. It's a reason we don't like to think about it. It's past our comprehension. It's past our reality, really. It happened to Jesus because he was fully human. And tonight's really about him being just like me and you, about what he gave up. He had to have been somebody, and you can draw this by inference in the Gospels, that loved the outdoors, that loved being with people, that also loved being remotely by himself with God in prayer, that loved what he did, that loved those around him, that loved his family, but also more than his family, anybody who would follow him, anybody that understood that the kingdom of God was close because Jesus was close. And he gave that all up. That was all to be given up. If we don't embrace that aspect of Jesus, not just the fact that he's fully Lord, which is a sermon for another day, but fully human, just like me and you, then the death is rendered a little merely sideshow on the way to Easter, but it's not. It is the crucial key pin, the lynch that holds everything together, that's joined to Sunday morning at the hip. Easter couldn't have happened without the cross, and the cross had to be the prelude to the resurrection. What Jesus gave up was something that perhaps nobody else ever could, nor nobody else ever will. Of course, we believe that, but nonetheless, I'm going to say that tonight through a story. I think the best way to get into this, rather than make this any personal account, perhaps of someone that I have lost, and perhaps ask you to remember somebody you had lost, it. We'll just concentrate on what Jesus lost. And I get at it through a story of a graduate student and a professor out on the West Coast had in his class in a college on the West Coast who was in a graduate school. And this man, early Middle Ages, early 40s, had migrated to this country, been accepted into graduate programs in this professor's class. And the professor noticed he was without a left hand. And they got to know each other pretty well. And he shared with him over coffee one time how that had happened. And this was his story. He came from a part of the world that the penalty for crimes was much more severe than what we are used to in our country. And he had stolen some things. In this case, some bags of grain. And he admitted that he'd done it. He stole it, as he said, for his family. They were starving, and in order for them to survive the winter, he had to steal, and he did. For that, he lost his hand. And the American professor, commenting on that, said that there must have been a very, very painful, and the man said, well, of course. This is what he said, and this is a distinction with a great difference, if I could tonight. He said it was extremely painful, but it wasn't hard. And the professor said, you've lost me on that. He said, well, look. He said, do you have children? The professor said, yes, I do. He said, would you give up your hand in order that your children would live? And the professor thought about it a second. He said, yes, I would. Jesus gave up his life not for those who were just around him, but for all those who followed in faith, all those who came after him, all those who would believe in his name. He gave everything up in order that he could give us everything. He gave up everything so that we would gain everything. And the only way to do it, and he could have avoided it, was by his death. Not his hand, not his time, not money, not possessions, but the most he could give, which was his very life. In his own language, to save people like me and you. It's good, but only good now. We embrace it now. On this Good Friday night, this night, a holy night, I wish you well on it. I wish you a good night. And we'll see each other again.
beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch's treasure. How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turned his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. Yes, it is finished. Oh, it is finished. Oh, I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom. But this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my